The most expensive mistakes are rarely caused by bad information. They are caused by deciding what to believe before the facts have a chance to speak. On a chilly Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, Monica Brooks stepped out of a gray sedan and checked the time on her phone. It was 9:07 a.m. In less than 3 hours, an $85 million acquisition would either move forward or collapse. Months of negotiations, legal reviews, financial audits, and board approvals had all led to this day. Hundreds of jobs, multiple businesses, and an entire expansion strategy depended on one final authorization. Across the city, attorneys were already gathering in conference rooms. Investment teams were preparing closing documents. Corporate advisors were waiting for confirmation. Every minute mattered. Monica adjusted the strap of her handbag and walked toward the entrance of First National Bank. Unlike the executives featured on magazine covers and financial television programs, she preferred simplicity. She wore dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, comfortable flats, and a modest watch. There were no designer logos, no visible signs of wealth, no security team following behind her. To most people passing by, she looked like an ordinary customer heading into an ordinary bank. The revolving doors opened, and she stepped into the spacious lobby. Customers waited in line. Employees moved between workstations. The soft hum of printers blended with quiet conversations. Monica approached the main service counter and placed a black corporate card on the polished surface. The transaction itself should have taken less than 15 minutes. Instead, it was about to become one of the most talked-about incidents the branch had ever experienced. Karen Whitmore, the branch manager, picked up the card and examined it. Her eyes moved from the card to Monica and then back again. Something about the interaction seemed to trigger an assumption she could not explain. Karen narrowed her eyes slightly before typing information into her computer. Several moments passed. Then she suddenly stopped. Her expression changed. She looked at the screen, then at the card, and finally at Monica. The confidence in her posture hardened into certainty. Without lowering her voice, Karen lifted the card between two fingers and made an announcement loud enough for nearby customers to hear. "That card is counterfeit." The words cut through the lobby like a siren. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. A man near the teller line lowered his phone. A woman seated in the waiting area paused with a coffee cup halfway to her lips. Even several employees looked up from their desks. Monica remained perfectly still. "Excuse me," she asked calmly. Karen folded her arms. "I have worked in banking for 17 years, she said, "and I know a fake card when I see one." The attention around them intensified immediately. Monica glanced at the card and then back at Karen. "The card belongs to me," she replied. Karen gave a short laugh. "That is what they all say." A few uncomfortable whispers spread through the room. Monica heard them. She also recognized something else. This conversation had already stopped being about the card. Karen glanced around the lobby. The growing audience seemed to energize her. "Unfortunately," she announced loudly, "fraud attempts have become more common lately." The statement lingered in the air. Monica could practically feel strangers forming opinions before learning a single fact. Yet her expression never changed. Across town, a legal team was waiting for her authorization. 58 minutes remained before the acquisition entered its final review window. Her phone vibrated with a new message. "Closing team assembled. Awaiting confirmation." Monica read it and quietly placed the phone back into her handbag. Karen interpreted the calmness as weakness. In reality, Monica had spent decades navigating boardrooms, negotiations, and billion-dollar decisions. She understood pressure. She understood ego. Most importantly, she understood what happened when people became convinced they were right before verifying the truth. Karen slid the card toward herself instead of returning it. "We are going to need to investigate this," she said. Monica looked directly into her eyes. "Then perhaps we should start by verifying the account." Karen smiled confidently. "Oh, we will." Around them, the crowd continued growing. Nobody in the lobby realized it yet, but the woman being publicly accused of fraud was only one signature away from closing one of the largest acquisitions in Chicago that year. And the manager leading the accusation was already taking the first steps toward a mistake that would soon become impossible to hide. For several seconds, neither woman moved. The black corporate card remained on the counter between them like the center of a dispute that should never have existed. Karen Whitmore appeared completely comfortable with the attention gathering around her. In fact, the growing audience seemed to strengthen her confidence. Monica Brooks noticed it immediately. Some people became more careful when others were watching. Karen became more certain. Until we complete our review, this transaction will not move forward, Karen announced. Several customers exchanged glances. The words sounded official enough to convince anyone who did not know the full story. Monica remained calm. What review? She asked. The review required when something does not look right. Karen tapped her keyboard and stared at the monitor. There are inconsistencies. What inconsistencies? Monica asked. Karen hesitated for a fraction of a second. That information is internal. The answer drew a few nods from nearby customers. Yet it also caught the attention of a young teller working 2 stations away. Her name tag read Emily Carter. Emily had been quietly observing the interaction since the accusation first echoed through the lobby. Something about the situation bothered her. Not because Karen was conducting a review. Reviews happened every day. What bothered her was how quickly the branch manager had reached a conclusion. Emily glanced toward her own monitor and discreetly searched the account information attached to the card. Within seconds, she noticed something unusual. The account carried a level of authorization rarely seen inside local branches. Emily looked again, then a third time. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Across the lobby, Monica's phone vibrated again. She checked the screen. Another message from the legal team appeared. 47 minutes remaining before final review window. Awaiting confirmation. Monica locked the screen and slipped the phone back into her handbag. Karen noticed. You seem very concerned about timing, she said. Because timing matters. It usually does when people are trying to rush procedures. The implication was obvious. Several customers looked toward Monica again. Karen appeared satisfied with the reaction. Monica simply folded her hands. Verification exists for a reason, she replied. Then perhaps we should start there. Karen leaned back in her chair. I will determine the appropriate next step. Emily frowned. That response did not sound right. Verification should have been the first step, not the last. She opened another screen and reviewed the account profile more carefully. The information surprised her even more. There were no fraud warnings, no risk alerts, no suspicious activity notifications. Nothing supported the public accusation unfolding in front of the lobby. Emily looked up toward Monica. The woman standing at the counter did not appear nervous. She did not appear frightened. If anything, she looked patient. It was the kind of patience that came from certainty. Karen interpreted it differently. I am placing a temporary hold on this transaction, she announced loudly. The statement rippled through the room. Whispers immediately followed. Monica slowly raised an eyebrow. Based on what? Karen clicked another button. Based on my judgment as branch manager. Emily's concern deepened. That was not the answer she expected to hear. A hold of this magnitude was unusual. Meanwhile, across Chicago, attorneys, investors, and executives continued waiting for a transaction worth $85 million to move forward. 42 minutes remained before negotiations could be reopened. Monica knew it. The legal team knew it. The acquisition team knew it. The only person in the room who seemed unaware of the consequences was the woman sitting behind the counter. And with every decision Karen made, she was moving further away from the facts and closer to a mistake that would soon be impossible to explain. Emily Carter could no longer ignore what she was seeing. While Karen Whitmore continued presenting the situation as though it were a routine fraud review, the account details on Emily's monitor told a completely different story. She carefully opened another layer of customer information and felt her pulse quicken. The account carried special authorization codes. Not fraud alerts. Not security warnings. Authorization codes. Emily read the screen again to make sure she was not misunderstanding what she was seeing. Across the lobby, Karen continued typing with exaggerated confidence. These reviews can take time, she announced loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. Especially when there are questions about legitimacy. More whispers spread through the room. Several people were no longer pretending not to watch. Monica Brooks remained calm despite the growing attention. She had learned long ago that people often revealed far more about themselves during moments of pressure than they ever intended. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was not a message. It was a call. Monica glanced at the screen and immediately answered. Good morning, she said. The voice on the other end sounded concerned. Monica, the acquisition team is requesting an update. The sellers are becoming nervous. Monica looked briefly toward Karen. There is a delay at the bank. Silence followed. A delay? The caller asked. Everything was approved days ago. I am aware. How much time do we have? Monica checked the clock mounted on the wall. 36 minutes remained before the final review deadline. Not much. After ending the call, she slipped the phone back into her handbag. Karen had listened carefully. Instead of reconsidering her position, the urgency seemed to reinforce her assumptions. Important transaction? Karen asked. Very. That does not change procedure. Monica met her gaze. Neither does speculation. A few nearby customers exchanged looks. The response landed harder than Karen expected. For a moment, the branch manager seemed irritated that Monica refused to become emotional. She expected defensiveness. She expected panic. Instead, she was getting patience. Emily finally stood from her workstation. She walked toward Karen carrying a printed account summary. Karen, I think you should review this. Karen barely glanced at the paper. Not now. Emily hesitated. There are details here that may be important. Karen's expression tightened. I said I am handling it. The dismissal surprised several employees nearby. Emily rarely challenged management. If she was speaking up, there was usually a reason. Yet Karen pushed the document aside without reading it. Monica noticed everything. She noticed Emily's concern. She noticed the uncertainty beginning to spread among the staff. Most importantly, she noticed that nobody had actually contacted verification. The simplest solution remained untouched. Instead of gathering facts, Karen seemed focused on proving a conclusion she had already reached. Then she made another decision. She opened a new screen, entered her credentials, and clicked several approval boxes. Emily immediately recognized what was happening. Karen, she said carefully, what are you doing? Karen did not look up. Adding temporary restrictions as a precaution. Emily stared at her. Before verification, Karen finally turned around. I am the branch manager. I know what I am doing. The lobby grew noticeably quieter. Even customers who understood nothing about banking could sense that something was wrong. Monica folded her hands and watched calmly. Across Chicago, attorneys were staring at clocks. Executives were waiting beside and signed documents. 31 minutes remained before an $85 million acquisition entered dangerous territory. Yet inside the bank, the person creating the delay still believed she was protecting the institution. And with every passing minute, the cost of that mistake continued growing. The tension inside the branch continued building even though nobody raised their voice. Sometimes the most uncomfortable moments arrived not through chaos, but through certainty. Karen Whitmore remained convinced she was protecting the bank. Monica Brooks remained convinced that facts would eventually catch up with assumptions. Between them stood a growing audience that had quietly chosen sides without realizing how little information they actually possessed. Emily Carter returned to her workstation but could not stop looking at the account profile. Every detail she reviewed raised more questions. Executive authorization indicators remained visible. Internal relationship notes remained active. None of it aligned with the narrative Karen was presenting to the lobby. Emily clicked deeper into the profile and suddenly froze. A bright internal designation appeared across the top of the screen. She blinked once and read it again. Then a second time. Her stomach tightened. The customer standing at the counter was connected to one of the highest relationship classifications available inside the bank. Emily immediately stood and walked back toward Karen. Karen, please look at this. Karen sighed heavily. Emily, not now. I am serious. Karen barely glanced toward her. I said I am handling it. Emily lowered her voice. You need to review the account classification. For the first time, Karen looked directly at her. The irritation was obvious. Are you questioning my judgment? The question immediately ended the conversation. Emily knew continuing the discussion publicly would only make things worse. She stepped back, but concern remained written across her face. Several nearby employees had noticed the exchange. Now they were beginning to wonder what Emily had seen. Across the lobby, Monica's phone vibrated once more. 26 minutes remaining. The message came from the lead attorney handling the acquisition. The sellers were requesting confirmation. The investment team was requesting confirmation. Everyone was requesting confirmation. Monica typed a brief response. Working on it. More soon. She placed the phone away and calmly looked at Karen. Have you contacted verification yet? Karen shook her head. That decision will be made when appropriate. Monica slowly nodded. Interesting. The single word carried enough weight to make several customers glance at each other. Karen folded her arms. "You seem very confident for someone whose transaction is under review." Monica met her eyes. "Because my confidence does not come from assumptions." The response landed harder than Karen expected. A businessman near the waiting area quietly smiled. Another customer lowered her newspaper. Public opinion was beginning to shift. Karen felt it happening and responded by becoming even more rigid. She opened another screen and reviewed the restrictions she had already placed on the account. Seeing them seemed to reassure her. The system now reflected the conclusion she had already reached. Unfortunately, it still did not reflect the facts. Then movement near the entrance caught the attention of several employees. The front doors opened, and a group of sharply dressed executives entered the lobby. Regional directors, operations specialists, compliance personnel. Surprise visits from senior leadership were rare. The atmosphere changed immediately. Employees straightened in their chairs. Conversations became quieter. Karen noticed the visitors and felt a wave of confidence return. In her mind, the timing could not have been better. Leadership was arriving while she was handling what she believed was a major security concern. She subtly adjusted her blazer and sat a little taller. Emily felt the exact opposite. Her concern deepened. The more she learned about Monica's account, the worse this situation appeared. Meanwhile, Monica remained completely calm. 23 minutes remained before the acquisition entered dangerous territory. Yet she showed no panic, no frustration, no anger. She simply watched as the executive visitors slowly moved through the lobby. They were greeting employees, reviewing operations, and making their way toward the center of the branch. Karen smiled confidently as they approached. She expected validation. She expected recognition. She expected praise for being cautious. What she did not realize was that the closer those executives came to her desk, the closer the truth came with them. The executive group continued moving through the branch at an unhurried pace, but their presence transformed the atmosphere completely. Employees who had been whispering moments earlier suddenly became focused on their workstations. Customers lowered their voices. Even Karen Whitmore seemed more aware of how she appeared. She sat straighter, occasionally glancing toward the approaching visitors as if anticipating recognition. In her mind, she had identified a serious problem before anyone else. She believed the arrival of senior leadership would confirm that she had acted responsibly. Emily Carter watched the same scene unfold with growing unease. The account profile remained open on her screen. The executive relationship indicators were still there. The authorization codes were still there. Nothing she found supported Karen's conclusions. If anything, every new detail pushed in the opposite direction. Emily looked toward Monica Brooks again. 20 minutes remained before the acquisition entered a critical stage. Yet Monica stood exactly as she had from the beginning. Calm, patient, completely unshaken. That composure was beginning to affect the people around her. Some customers who had initially accepted Karen's accusation were now questioning it. Others had started watching Karen more closely than Monica. Confidence can be persuasive, but overconfidence often creates its own doubts. Karen suddenly looked toward Monica and folded her arms. "You still seem remarkably relaxed." Monica smiled faintly. "Experience helps." "Experience with situations like this?" Karen asked. "Experience with people deciding they know the answer before they ask the right question." A few customers exchanged glances. Karen's expression tightened. The response felt less like an argument and more like an observation. Before she could answer, Emily approached again. This time she carried additional documentation. "Karen, there is something else you need to see." Karen exhaled sharply. "Emily, not now. I think it is important." "I am busy." Emily hesitated. Then she lowered her voice. "The account appears to have direct executive relationship oversight." For the first time, Karen looked uncertain. The uncertainty lasted less than a second. "Then the records are outdated." Emily knew that explanation made little sense. Relationship profiles of that level were updated constantly. Yet Karen dismissed the information without reviewing it. Several nearby employees had now noticed the exchange. The doubt Emily felt was beginning to spread. Meanwhile, the executive visitors continued approaching the center of the lobby. Regional directors stopped to speak with employees. Operations specialists reviewed service metrics displayed on digital screens. A compliance officer made notes while walking. Their gradual progress brought them closer and closer to Karen's station. Monica's phone vibrated again. She checked the message. 17 minutes remaining. Sellers requesting final status update. She typed a brief response and returned the phone to her handbag. Across town, conference rooms were filled with attorneys waiting for her authorization. Documents sat prepared for signatures. Millions of dollars remained frozen behind a delay that should have taken minutes to resolve. Back inside the branch, Karen continued defending a theory instead of verifying facts. Then one of the regional directors glanced toward Monica's station. His expression changed slightly. He looked again. Another executive followed his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Emily noticed immediately. Karen did not. She was too focused on maintaining control of the situation. The executives continued forward. Their pace remained calm, but their attention had shifted. Several employees sensed it. A few customers sensed it as well. Monica simply watched in silence. The truth was moving toward the counter one step at a time. And for the first time that morning, the confidence Karen had relied on so heavily was about to be tested against something much stronger than assumptions. The regional directors slowed their pace as they approached the center of the lobby. What had begun as a routine branch visit was quietly becoming something else. One of the executives glanced toward Monica Brooks again and exchanged a look with a colleague. Emily Carter noticed immediately. The reaction was subtle, but it was there. Recognition. Karen Whitmore noticed none of it. She remained focused on maintaining control of the situation she had created. As I have explained several times, Karen said, the review will continue until I am satisfied with the results. Monica regarded her calmly. And what results are you looking for? Karen opened her mouth, but did not answer immediately. The question seemed simple. Yet for the first time all morning, she struggled to explain her reasoning. Emily watched closely. So did several customers. Karen finally responded. I am looking for confirmation that everything is legitimate. Monica nodded slightly. Then we agree. Karen frowned. Agree? Because I have been asking for verification from the beginning. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Several customers exchanged glances. Even people who knew nothing about banking could recognize the difference between verification and speculation. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Before she could respond, one of the regional directors approached Emily's station. Good morning, he said politely. Everything running smoothly today? Emily hesitated. Her eyes moved briefly toward Monica's account information, then toward Karen, then back to the executive. Mostly, she answered carefully. The director followed her gaze. He noticed the crowd gathered near the counter. He noticed Karen's tense posture. Most importantly, he noticed Monica. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Interesting, he said quietly. Nearby, Monica's phone vibrated again. 14 minutes remaining. The message came from the acquisition attorneys. Final review window approaching. Immediate update requested. Monica read the notification and locked the screen. Across the city, conference rooms remained filled with waiting executives. Documents sat ready for signatures. Millions of dollars remained in limbo because a process that should have required a few minutes had now consumed nearly an hour. Back inside the branch, the regional director stepped away and joined the other executives. A brief conversation followed. It lasted less than 30 seconds. Yet when it ended, all of them looked toward Monica. Emily felt her heartbeat accelerate. Whatever they knew, it was important. Karen finally noticed the attention shifting away from her. She glanced toward the executive group and forced a confident smile. In her mind, senior leadership would soon recognize her diligence. She expected approval. She expected validation. Instead, the executives began walking directly toward Monica's station. Customers noticed it too. The whispers that had filled the lobby throughout the morning suddenly stopped. The room seemed to hold its breath. Karen straightened her blazer and prepared to explain the situation. Monica remained perfectly calm. The executive group arrived only a few feet away before stopping. One of the regional directors looked directly at her. His expression carried genuine surprise. Ms. Brooks, he said. The reaction was immediate. Emily froze. Several employees looked up from their desks. Karen blinked. The director smiled politely. We were not expecting to see you here today. Monica returned the smile. Neither was I. The words landed softly, but their impact rippled through the lobby. For the first time all morning, uncertainty appeared on Karen's face. The confidence that had guided every decision suddenly felt less secure. Around her, Customers were beginning to realize they might not understand the situation as well as they thought. And as the executive group continued focusing their attention on Monica rather than the accusation, the foundation beneath Karen's assumptions began to crack. For a brief moment, nobody in the lobby seemed to know how to react. The regional director's recognition had changed the atmosphere in an instant. Karen Whitmore felt the shift immediately. The confidence she had relied upon throughout the morning suddenly felt less secure. "You know her?" one customer whispered quietly. Another employee looked toward Monica with renewed curiosity. The regional director smiled politely. "It has been a while, Ms. Brooks." "It has," Monica replied. "I hope you have been well." Before the conversation could continue, another member of the executive group stepped forward. His expression carried the same look of recognition. "We were informed your acquisition was closing today," he said. "I assumed you would already be in a conference room." Several employees exchanged confused glances. Karen's stomach tightened. Acquisition. The word alone carried more weight than she wanted to acknowledge. Monica offered a small smile. That was the plan. The executive's eyes moved briefly toward the card still sitting beyond Monica's reach. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Silence followed. Karen quickly stepped forward. There was a verification concern involving a payment card. The explanation sounded far less convincing than it had earlier. The executive looked toward Monica. "A verification concern?" Monica nodded. "That is one way to describe it." Emily Carter lowered her eyes, trying not to reveal her reaction. The situation had reached a point where everyone in the room could sense there was more to the story than Karen's version. One of the compliance officers glanced toward the account screen still visible at Karen's station. "Has verification been contacted?" he asked. The question landed heavily. Karen hesitated. "Not yet." Several executives exchanged looks. The compliance officer frowned. "Not yet." Karen immediately felt the room becoming smaller. "I believed additional review was necessary first." Nobody responded right away. Monica remained calm. The executives remained professional. Yet the silence itself felt like a response. Across the city, attorneys continued watching the clock. Monica's phone vibrated again. She checked the message. 11 minutes remained before the final review deadline. The acquisition team was requesting an immediate update. She locked the screen and placed the phone back into her handbag. The regional director noticed. "Still waiting?" he asked quietly. Unfortunately, the answer seemed to concern him. Nearby customers were now openly listening. The narrative had changed. Earlier, people wondered whether Monica belonged in the bank. Now they were wondering why the executives seemed to know her. Karen sensed the change and attempted to regain control. "Regardless of who anyone is, procedure must be followed." "I agree," Monica replied. "That is exactly why I requested verification." The response hit harder than anything else said that morning. Several customers nodded. Even employees who had remained silent were beginning to see the contradiction. The compliance officer stepped closer to Karen's workstation. "Show me the account profile." Karen hesitated. Then she turned the monitor slightly. The officer studied the information. His expression changed almost immediately. He looked at the screen again, then at Monica, then back at the screen. Emily knew exactly what he had seen. The executive relationship indicators were impossible to miss. The officer quietly called another executive over. Both reviewed the profile together. Neither looked pleased. Karen suddenly realized something she had not felt all morning. Uncertainty. The assumptions that had seemed so solid an hour earlier were beginning to crack under the weight of facts. And standing only a few feet away, Monica Brooks remained exactly as she had been from the beginning. Patient, composed, and waiting for the truth to finally catch up with everyone else. The compliance officer continued studying the account profile, while the silence inside the branch grew heavier by the second. What he was seeing on the screen did not match the story Karen Whitmore had been presenting all morning. Executive authorization markers appeared throughout the account. Relationship management notes extended across multiple departments. Special handling instructions were visible in several sections. None of it suggested fraud. None of it suggested risk. The officer slowly looked up. "Who approved these restrictions?" he asked. Karen cleared her throat. "I did." "Based on what verification?" The question landed like a weight in the center of the lobby. Karen hesitated. The card generated concerns. "Concerns are not verification," the officer replied calmly. Nearby customers exchanged looks. Even those who knew nothing about banking could hear the difference. Karen felt dozens of eyes on her. Earlier, that attention had strengthened her confidence. Now it felt very different. Emily Carter remained silent, but relief was beginning to replace the anxiety she had carried all morning. At last, someone was asking the questions that should have been asked from the beginning. Monica stood quietly beside the counter. Her phone vibrated once more. She checked the screen. 9 minutes remained before the acquisition entered its final review stage. Another message followed immediately. Sellers requesting answer now. Monica locked the screen and placed the phone away. The regional director noticed. Still waiting, he asked. Yes. His expression darkened. That acquisition affects a lot of people. It does. Several executives exchanged concerned looks. Karen heard every word. Acquisition. Attorneys. Executive relationship status. The pieces were beginning to form a picture she did not like. Yet she still could not bring herself to admit the possibility that she had been wrong. Regardless of account status, Karen said, the card still needs to be verified. The compliance officer nodded. I agree. Karen seemed relieved for a moment. Then he continued, which is why I am confused about why verification was never contacted. The relief vanished instantly. Another silence followed. The officer turned toward one of the executives standing nearby. Call corporate verification now. The executive immediately stepped away and pulled out a phone. The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Customers stopped whispering. Employees stopped pretending to focus on other tasks. Everyone understood that the answer was finally coming. Less than 2 minutes later, the executive returned. His expression said everything before he spoke. Verification has already reviewed similar alerts this morning. The compliance officer folded his arms. And the issue is connected to a software update deployed before opening hours. Karen's face lost color. The executive continued. Multiple branches reported temporary authorization errors. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The card is valid. The words echoed through the lobby. The account is fully verified. A ripple of disbelief moved through the crowd. The businessman near the waiting area slowly shook his head. The woman with the coffee cup stared openly at Karen. Emily closed her eyes for a brief second. The answer was exactly what she had suspected. Monica remained calm. She had known the truth would eventually arrive. What surprised her was how long it had taken. The compliance officer looked directly at Karen. So the restrictions were placed before the facts were known. Karen opened her mouth, but found no words. For the first time all morning, the assumptions that had guided every decision stood exposed beneath the bright lights of the branch. And just when it seemed the situation could not become any more uncomfortable, movement near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Another figure had entered the lobby. The reaction from the executives was immediate. Several straightened their posture. One stepped aside. Another lowered his voice. And as the distinguished man began walking toward the center of the room, every employee in the branch instantly recognized the president of the bank. The moment the president of the bank stepped into view, the atmosphere inside the branch changed completely. Employees who had been standing casually immediately straightened their posture. Conversations disappeared. Even customers sensed that someone important had arrived. The distinguished man moved through the lobby with calm confidence, acknowledging employees with brief nods as he approached. Karen Whitmore felt a wave of relief. Surely this would finally confirm that she had done the right thing. After all, she had spent the entire morning protecting the institution from what she believed was a serious problem. The president reached the center of the lobby and exchanged greetings with several executives. Then something unexpected happened. As he turned toward Karen's station, his eyes landed on Monica Brooks. He stopped walking. The executives beside him noticed immediately. For a brief moment, the entire branch seemed frozen. The president looked at Monica again to make certain he was not mistaken. Then his expression changed completely. Surprise gave way to recognition. Recognition gave way to concern. Ms. Brooks, he said. The words echoed through the lobby. Several employees looked at one another in confusion. Karen felt her stomach tighten. Monica offered a polite smile. Good morning. The president immediately changed direction and walked straight toward her. We have been trying to reach you all morning, he said. The acquisition cannot close without your authorization. A stunned silence swept across the room. One customer near the waiting area slowly lowered his phone. Another covered her mouth in disbelief. Karen felt the confidence she had relied upon all morning begin to disappear. Monica glanced at her handbag where her phone rested. I have been a little delayed, she replied. The president followed her gaze toward the counter. His eyes settled on the black corporate card that had started the entire situation. Then he looked toward the executives standing nearby. Can someone explain why Ms. Brooks is still here? Nobody answered immediately. The compliance officer finally stepped forward. There was a verification issue this morning. A software update issue, another executive corrected. The card was valid the entire time. The president nodded slowly. His attention shifted toward Karen. And yet restrictions were placed on the account. Karen swallowed. I believed additional precautions were necessary. The president remained silent for several seconds. The silence felt far more uncomfortable than any criticism could have. Additional precautions, he repeated. Before verification? Karen struggled to respond. Every explanation that had sounded reasonable earlier now seemed fragile. Around the lobby, employees and customers listened carefully. The president turned back toward Monica. How much time remains before the review deadline? Monica checked her phone. 8 minutes. Very little. The president immediately looked toward the executives. Then let us stop wasting it. He gestured toward the compliance officer. Remove every restriction immediately. The officer moved without hesitation. Within moments, screens throughout the system updated. Temporary holds disappeared. Review flags vanished. The account returned to normal. Contact the acquisition team and confirm authorization is moving forward, the president ordered. One executive stepped away to make the call while another opened the activity log connected to the account. Seconds later, every action taken throughout the morning appeared on the screen. Every restriction, every escalation, every warning, every opportunity to verify facts, every opportunity that had been ignored. The president reviewed the report carefully before turning toward Emily Carter. You repeatedly requested that the account be reviewed properly? Emily nodded. Yes, sir. And you identified the executive relationship indicators before anyone else? I did. The president offered a brief nod. Thank you for doing exactly what you were trained to do. Emily's shoulders relaxed. For the first time all morning, she smiled. Karen lowered her eyes. The contrast between the two employees could not have been clearer. Moments later, the executive handling the call returned. The authorization has been received. The acquisition is approved. Relief spread through the executive team. Months of negotiations had been saved. $85 million would move forward on schedule. The president looked back toward Karen. This matter will be placed under formal review, he said. Procedure exists to discover facts. It does not exist to replace them. Karen said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Monica collected her card and placed it inside her handbag. She thanked the executives, thanked Emily, and turned toward the entrance. Just before reaching the doors, she paused and looked back. The entire lobby fell silent. The problem was never the card, she said. Nobody spoke. The problem was how quickly people decided what kind of person they thought could own it. Several customers lowered their eyes. Karen stood motionless. Emily quietly watched. The president said nothing because there was nothing left to add. Monica smiled politely and walked into the Chicago sunlight. Seconds later, her phone vibrated. Acquisition approved. $85 million. Months of work completed. Behind her, the lobby remained silent. Not because of the transaction, but because everyone finally understood the difference between verification and assumption.